Mr. Frank?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Board of Education for the Warren City School District, the regular meeting for September 26, 2023 at 6 p.m. At the Warren G. Harding High School Cafetorium with live stream available at warrencityschools.org. This meeting is a meeting for the Warren City School District Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda items number 11A and 11B. At this time, will you all please stand to salute the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The time is 6:03, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Flanagan?
Here.
Mr. Fowley?
Here.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Here.
Mrs. Patterson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. At this time, there is no need for agenda item number 3, which is executive session, and we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, communications. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you. Number of communications this evening. The first communication I'd like to share is there'll be an agenda on tonight's, or an item, a resolution on tonight's agenda asking the Board of Education to amend the school calendar for students where we will be having a waiver day next Wednesday, October 4th. Our last waiver day had great attendance by a large number of staff members, especially at 3 of our buildings. We've been rolling out a number of trainings related to the science of reading, CHAMPS trainings that we started in June and August, and again here this year to work on different aspects of our classroom and our students and how our adults work with children. We've had social emotional learning sessions. We've been working on our investment for interactive whiteboards in our classrooms, and those boards, again, were ordered, paid for, and didn't come in before the school year started. I believe Jefferson's boards are up. We put Jefferson's boards, installed them first because there was a commitment by the teaching team that all classrooms K through 4 have the boards, but it'd be K to 5. So it's like a building-wide initiative for the early primary education program over there. And I believe Willard was next. Laura, are those boards being installed? We're doing approximately 3 boards a day, with our internal carpenters. So those are some of the things that we want to have the ongoing professional development. Sorry, there's a gnat over here. Ongoing professional development for our staff, not just on how to become more familiar with the tool in that case, but also how it aligns with the programs in our curriculum. And we have a lot of learning that our professional learning communities are doing this after school at different buildings. And so it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. So when we put everything together from the work we're doing with the number of the state mandates, we also have additional trainings we need to do regarding in House Bill 33. If a child is identified with a seizure disorder, we have to have the seizure plan in place, which we had before school, keep them monitoring and have to update those every year. We have some CPR friends and family trainings that we're doing, from a group in the district that wanted to have that. So we have a lot of great things, academic and non-academic, and we believe it is definitely a worthy use of time. When we have a November waiver day, we're going to be hosting the county innovative day, and that'll be 10 districts across the county all coming to Harding as well as Lincoln. Is that correct? And Willard, as in the past. And so we're going to do that, but that's not going to be as much as a district presented day. So this is pretty much our last shot at the start of the year to infuse the professional learning on the shifts that we're trying to make as a district. So talking with our team, I thought that's very important. So that'll be on the agenda. Hopefully you guys will be in approval of that. Another thing I wanted to just mention as a communication, I've talked with all of our campus leaders across the district, and if the board is interested, they would like to also feature their buildings like they did last year. And I'm looking at Dr. Ulisny, I see her in here. She's looking at starting with January, because it's already scheduled, or I'm sorry, December. December is already scheduled here. And the other 4 pre-K through 8 buildings will probably go on the road mid to late month, January, February, March, and April. I can't remember the order, but I know you guys really enjoyed that, and it was great to do those at the buildings. So I'm going to start working with Treasurer Shortino on some dates for next year, probably here in the next few weeks, and that'll be how we're going to look to do our board meetings going further into the start of next year. A couple other items I just wanted to make good reference to. Hats off or kudos to the professionalism of Tribune editor Brenda Leonard and her follow-up this Sunday to the prior week's editorial, which quite frankly was wrong. But when I talked to her on Monday and subsequent conversations Karen had with her throughout the week, very beginning, you know what, we're wrong, we own it, etc. She took it to another level of professionalism, and I really enjoyed reading her space this week. I read it every week. I never told her that I'm a fan, actually, and read it, but, her comments on, our air doesn't change our stance, nor should it. Your position's your position. You just didn't back it well, and, moving forward on that. So, we know and we understand that numbers are very fluid when it comes to enrollment. The Tribune reporting that between 2019 and 2022 that we lost 25% of our enrollment just wasn't true. Wasn't true. It was looking at the report improperly, and that's what led to bad information. But it's also what I learned in this, and so did Treasurer Shortino, and I'm not going to speak for her, but what we learned in it as well is there's also errors that we did on our own reading the report. As far as in 2019, open enrollment wasn't included. In 2022, it was. Well, that makes that line item not as easy to read, and you have to keep digging into it. And when we do that, we found our own discrepancies that instead of losing 25%, which was reported, we lost approximately 2%, which we knew we were not experiencing significant enrollment declines. We know what our numbers have been over the last several years. We've not been hemorrhaging students. We believe we have that understanding of where enrollment is. And again, kudos to Brenda Leonard and her professionalism on, that's my opinion, my editorial now, my opinion on how she handled it. I was very pleased with that. One thing I did want to comment on, though, is interesting, and we're going to have our presentation tonight on the state report card as it relates to Warren. But on Saturday, there was a sound off, which is those little anonymous bites out there. And whether it comes from a retired educator or whomever, that puts comments out there, took a slam at the Recreation and Wellness Center, which I can't think of anything else that's great for kids that's going to that magnitude here in the city of Warren right now. And took a hit at that and talking about being satisfied with 2.5 stars or pleased with ourselves. Now, I'm pleased with the fact that we have made gains. It's picked up 7 stars from last year to this year. That's what I'm pleased about. Yeah. Am I pleased with 2.5 stars? Nope. Everyone on my team knows. Are we pleased with 2.5 stars? No. But we know our data, and we know it's shifting. We were already seeing before this report card that the gaps were closing. Most of our graded areas met or exceeded pre-pandemic levels. That is not the national narrative. It's not. It's not. So are we pleased with it? I think there's no reason we should be higher. And I've identified the areas of where we are and where we aren't and where we need to go. But the fact 2 of our 5 buildings gained 2 stars in a single area of gap closing, there's significant, really good things going on in our areas of the district, especially with gap closing. That was our target. That was our focus, area of success. So like I said, I think that more of that, if the person is watching our live stream that felt so compelled to write such, jargon or whatever they want to put, hopefully tonight's presentation will educate them on what exactly this means and what exactly was in the report card and where we have been pushing our growth and our students and our academics in our classrooms. So a lot on the agenda tonight. That item is on the superintendent's report. I'm going to kick it off with the information I've already shared with the board, and then Wendy and Regina are going to get into the technical aspects of the data, and then Mr. Capers is going to be wrapping it up for us. So your administrative team is going to do that this evening. So with that said, that concludes my communications to the board this evening.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments from anyone on the board?
Yeah, I would just like to comment and thank our superintendent and our treasurer for their professionalism as well in communicating out to us and the community.
regarding the figures that were in the Tribune. And I also, as you said, I would like to thank the Tribune for their professionalism, because I too, when I read Brenda's piece, I was very, very happy with how, it was written. And I think, overall, we're all human. Everyone is, can make errors. No one is perfect. So I think the fact that everyone just approached it with a level of professionalism and grace, I think that it turned out well. We know exactly where we're at. And, just from me, I want to thank you for your professionalism personally.
Anyone else? No? Yeah, I agree with Vice President Lamperos. Number one, thank you all for your professionalism in catching it, and then catching the error that we made, even the slight error that it was, and definitely to the Tribune, one of our community partners, that helps to keep the public informed, for going back and righting that wrong, even though, like you said, they did not change their stance. Our goal is not that everybody agrees with us all the time. Everybody's not going to agree with each other all the time. We don't agree with each other. I'm sure you and your administration team don't agree with each other. Me and my wife, been married 20 years, we don't agree with each other all the time. Hi, honey. But but it's good to know that you're able and we're able to work with one another, and that's the key. Also, I want to say, about as far as the stars, I mean, of course, no, we're not elated about 2.5 stars, but we are elated about the gains. We are elated about the gains that happen in the midst of, like you said, a global pandemic, an unprecedented global pandemic. At the same time, we instituted new technology. At the same time, we had a lot of it, building administration changes and staffing changes nationally. Teachers were leaving the field because of what was going on at that time, and Warren City is no exception. So in the midst of all that, and kudos, I have nothing to say but kudos to all of our staff and our ground workers and teachers and everyone else. Thank you. If that's all, let's move to agenda item number 5, adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson? And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Agenda item number 6, Treasurer's Report, Ms. Sortino.
Tonight on the agenda, you have your permanent appropriation resolution that are set to pass. Not a significant change from what we did temporary-wise in July, except we've had some additional grants come in, allocations that we've received since then. So overall, as a district on a whole, we're appropriating just shy of $132 million in expenses. And in terms of the general fund, we have $72 million appropriated, and our available resources in that fund is $130 million. So, so we're doing, we're staying within our available resources. And also on the agenda is approval for advances back to the general fund. When we ended the fiscal year, we had a couple grants that we hadn't received the money for yet, and because of their nature, you can't do project cash requests. So it's just a revised code that we have to advance those monies out of the general fund. So now that we've come into the new fiscal year and we've received those grant dollars, we're advancing the money back from the grants to the general fund. So that's what's on the agenda for your approval. And I would like to say we had a good financial advisory committee meeting, but I'll leave that up to the committee to report on.
I got a feeling they're gonna...
Just want to make sure that you're aware that the PowerPoint will be out on the website from the Finance Advisory Committee.
Thank you for that, Karen. We appreciate it. Agenda item number 7, Superintendent's Report.
All right, thank you. Superintendent's report is going to be brought to you by the whole administrative team. I'm going to take a moment. Pass out my props. Thank you. running through the information that I've already presented to you guys electronically. So I'm just going to run down the sheet, and I'm not going to read to the board because I know you've already read it, but I want to talk about some areas that we showed significant increases because that was kind of the name of the game on the report card. There are not areas that shows really decreases other than one area in one building. So when we look at this, chronic absenteeism, where the state has said it went down approximately 3 to 5% across the state, we had double-digit decreases in chronic absenteeism. The district overall had 10% decrease. We know our students need to be present in order for them to be successful in our classrooms. Gap closings. All 5 of our buildings have shown growth in the area of gap closing, just as we had our internal data indicating to us throughout the year, as well as looking at it from our assessments. And double digit, you'll see when we get to each building and break them down where those gains were as well. Early literacy is gaining traction with all of our pre-K through 8 schools showing numeric improvement from last year. So going into this, not only did we look at the stars, Wendy, Regina, and I broke this down even further within our data and tried to give a numeric, quantify it numerically, where we were to where we are. And when we did that, that tells us how far we are as far as if we were in one star or to another. And you'll be able to see that on my markers. As you guys know, I'm old school when I go through data. So you know what I'm talking about when you're seeing this. You know, Harding lost some ground in the area of progress, and we're going to talk about that in the second part of our presentation as we're breaking down these areas, because when you say progress, there's different components that play into each one of those stars. When we talk about graduation, you know, in 2022, we had 85.8% of our students graduate, and in 2021, we had 87.8%. We have been in the mid to upper 80%. Pretty much since we started making traction in our 4-year graduation rate. Now, mind you, on the report card for Harding, the graduation rate factors in 4-year and 5-year, and they're weighted in 2 different directions. The 4 years, you know, holds more weight than the 5. And again, I know they'll be talking about this for the current class. Now, keep in mind on graduation rate, it's a year behind. This does not, on today's report card, does not measure the students that graduated in May of 23. It measures the kids that were in May of 22 is on September 23's report card. It's a year and a half behind on your data. So it's hard to impact something that's already, so we already know what next year's data is going to be, and that's in the presentation. College readiness, more than doubled as far as the numbers. I don't believe that's on the report card, but we have the data behind it. Talk about chronic absenteeism. You could see the 10% reduction for the district, and you could see it broken down by building, anywhere from 7 to 15% of the reduction of chronic absenteeism, which was great. We're looking and trying to move in the right direction. Gap closing, you could see where our rating was that it was 2 stars. It remained 2 stars, but it went up 7.3%. So it's not like we went up 1% or 0.5%. It went pretty good in the right direction across the district. In early literacy, that also has moved from the 1 star to the 2 stars, and as far as we're moving it within our buildings, we are already, as an administrative team, have taken action on how we're going to attack that area more in a stronger direction this year. As the board knows, we have some executive coaches that work with our administrators in the district, former superintendents, curriculum leaders, strong principals. They work with our administrators on data conferences with teachers, which the goal is for teachers to have data conferences with students in their classrooms, keeping that reciprocal communication going. When we're talking about the work with early literacy, we changed our program. Regina, our executive director of curriculum instruction, has taken on the task of being the executive coach for all of our pre-K through 2 principals and our curriculum liaisons. So when they're working, when they're doing instructional rounds in the classroom, her focus is going to be really focusing in that area of pre-K2 literacy and 3rd grade proficiency. I know she wanted me to say that as well, because where we get our points here in an area on the report card that's very important to us is the proficiency of third graders. That is definitely an area that is weighted that we need to be very cognizant of our work. Moving on, you can see the comments for Warren City's report card overall. Again, I referenced the gap closing, up 7.3 points, not stars, that's within the star. Early literacy, up a star. And actually, it went from what we estimate of one third of a star rating. When we quantified it, went from 1.9 to 2.2, and our progress component had stayed the same. When you flip to the next page, this takes you to Jefferson. You can see the work that our literacy went up. When we quantified it from 1.8 to 2.3, which again is a solid half a star, so that was some serious gain in there. Bless you. Gap closing up 7.1 points, and that took that building from 2 to 3 stars. You can see my circles and excitement on that page. When you go to Lincoln, you can see that the literacy went up. When we quantified it, it remained 2 stars, but went up nearly a half of a star, went from 2.1 to 2.5, and gap closing made a double gain, going from 2 stars to 4 stars over at Lincoln. So that was an area of some significant gain. Now, when we go and look at McGuffey, we look at it, and McGuffey, their progress went up from 3 stars to 4 stars, which is huge because we haven't seen that trend at all the buildings. So we know some of the good things that we have going on over there. We're trying to capitalize on that further. Gap closing also went from 2 stars to 3 stars. When we talk about their 1 star, we quantified it, they're at 1.9. They are just a hair below the 2 stars. Now, I believe all of our buildings should be 3 stars or higher. So again, they're right on the line. It's important for them to cross the line and do it strongly. And I believe, with some of the class size reductions we have in the elementary classrooms, that our classrooms aren't really stacked with students. That should be a support. When we're looking at Willard Pre-K through 8 school, Willard made overall the strongest gains with a 3-star increase over the board, where they went up 1 star in early literacy. And again, they're a real low 2-star, so they have to be very diligent about moving up to 2.5 and beyond to 3. And they have the potential to do that because when you look at their report card with being 3 stars in progress, and they went from 2 to 4 stars in gap closing, which is 18.5 points. They had a tremendous showing there as well. So I think Willard has some great potential to move in those areas. When you're looking at Harding High School, progress went down from 2 stars to 1 star. And we are absolutely not pleased with that. And when we break down the areas of the data, we realize very simply, and we're not blaming, the pandemic and any piece like that, but an area that we have struggled in our report card the last year or so, notably, has been in Algebra 1 and in biology. And so I believe that that's another area that Regina and her team are focusing on. We got a dual-pronged approach for Algebra 1 that we're working on to get that data moving, because we need to make it in achievement. Here, we need to make it in the progress component. But on a positive note, the gap closing went up 17.4 points. Even though they remained 2 stars, they moved from lower area of 2 stars up to the higher end of the 2 stars. So they're knocking on the door of 3 stars in progress, or gap closing. So again, focusing on those areas of achievement and tested categories and proficiency, improving the progress component, and improving the gap closing across the 3 stars should pay fruitful for Harding. A couple other things I wanted to point out. Willard is overall 3 stars. McGuffey is overall 3 stars. And Lincoln is overall 3 stars. So 3 out of our 4 pre-K through 8 buildings are rated 3 stars. What does that tell us? According to the state and how their definitions lie with 1 star through 5 stars, 3 stars means you are meeting the goals and objectives of the teaching. So 3 out of 4 of our building, or of our elementary buildings, are sitting there at the 3-star, which means our students are learning at the pace that is set for them by the state. The 2.5 star, which is at Jefferson, They know the areas where they're going, and with their early literacy picking up like it did, they're on the momentum to get there relatively soon. They need to continue to do exactly what they've been doing and keep their focus. So I guess that's my conclusion to this end of the presentation from breaking down the data for each one of the buildings. If you want to ask me questions now, or if you want to wait till the end, whatever you guys prefer.
I just have a comment. First of all, I want to thank the administrators and the teachers for their hard work in moving us forward. I'm thankful for the information. It made it so much easier to read, so much easier to explain to those who may not necessarily have questions, but you come into a lot of people who have comments, and a lot of times the comments are negative. However, with this type of information and the explanations that go with it, it makes it a lot easier to explain the good things, honestly, that we're doing in Warren City Schools. And for me, I can see the progress, and I can see us even moving forward even the more, So thank you guys for your commitment to our children.
Thank you. I mean, I could literally look at the 6 pages I shared with you and point to one area and say, and this is why the district is not 3 stars. Right here. I can pinpoint it with precision. and as I've shared that with you guys as well, individually or collectively. So, again, our data it was very strong. We saw that when our data started releasing in the summer. We saw the green in the areas. We knew where we were not hitting green. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Wendy and Regina and Mr. Capers, if you guys would like to take it from here.
Mr. Shiro?
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the chronic absenteeism data, and it's really not a question, it's a comment. Are we going to be affected by the new state definitions of absenteeism?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Will this severely be affected by the new state's definitions of chronic absenteeism? Specifically, now we have a religious holiday exemption. Apparently funerals are not important. There doesn't seem to be an exemption in the new law for this. It's pretty confusing.
Yeah, I think Mr. Capers is going to talk a little bit more about how that is shifted with the state. With the passage, with information such as chronic absenteeism being legislated from Columbus, they have a wonderful idea and a well-intended target, but they don't tell you what the resources are to get you there. And then when you have the roadblocks such as, there's no such thing other than our internal, in my opinion, of an excused absence. Every minute a child's out of school counts against them. So the clock is running every time. They have COVID, they're out for 5 days, counts against them. Death in the family counts against them. I mean, they're allowed to make up their work for credit and not fall behind. That's all internal on the work we do here in Warren City Schools. But from the state perspective, every minute you're out of school, the clock is running. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I think that we've made tremendous gains in that area as well. And again, looking at your leadership team that's going to take the presentation from here, we were intentional on who we have doing what work within our group. And I think that's very important.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just to follow up with Mr. Fowler, I know it's been really stressed amongst parents because I've been getting the calls and the communications as well, letters, as far as attendance. And parents do need to understand, families do need to understand that it's not about the school district excusing absences or an absence being excused by state mandate, by law, by our legislators in Columbus that we voted for. There are no excused absences. Every minute your child, like you said, is not in school, that they're late, that they're at a doctor's appointment, that they're home with the sniffles, or the dog ate their homework so they stayed home, or they're actually sick, like you said, with COVID, or with a funeral, or something else. It's time that is counted against not only them, but the city, the Warren City School District. So.
I think parents have to be very diligent when their children are sick. They need to stay home.
Yes.
When their children are not sick, they need to come to school.
Yes.
And I mean, that's something that, you know, we could work our magic to try to influence or impact that data, but ultimately, we don't have the full control
Exactly.
on that piece, but we do have the ability to influence it.
Exactly. Thank you for that. I'm sorry.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
As Mr. Shiro alluded to, you do have the packet in your binders. As Mr. Shiro went through and showed you the data and showed you where we were making gains, what we hope to do is just share a little bit of how things are calculated, what different components of the report card, what's really behind it. So the first part is achievement. Achievement is based on PI only now. And so what happens is when students take the test, they can be rated from limited all the way up to advanced plus, based on how they score on the Ohio State tests or the end of course exams in the high school. And so each area, each category, I guess, within these, it gives a percentage of where the percentage of students scored, and then you multiply it by a number. So if you take a look at the proficient, 18.2% of our students scored proficient, and you multiply that by 1, and that gives you 18.2 points. Once you go through and you do those calculations, you get a score rated, and you can see by the component rating next to it, you know, we are at 2 stars, and we are in the mid-range. We need to get up into that 71% in order to get at that 3 stars. And so every time a student takes that test, it's important that we are working towards that proficiency. That's where we're working instructionally also, is working at instructing at that proficient or higher level so that students can reach that rigor and understand and then hopefully perform well on the test. So you can see these situations here. The untested, there is a untested category, and that is attributed to students that were not in school at that time taking tests. So if a student is suspended during that time, we do make arrangements for students to come in and test, but sometimes that all doesn't happen all the time. Mr. Walker?
What area is this in that's being tested? Or is this just an example?
These are all the tests, but you've got mathematics, you've got mathematics, you've got ELA, you've got science and grades 5 and 8. Okay. This is your end of course exams, Algebra 1, geometry. This is everything together.
Gotcha.
So this takes into account every test that every child takes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Take into account the tests the children don't take. In other words,
If it's untested, yes, it does count against us.
So the untested count against our score.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Because it is factored in. So one of the things with that, the points received at the bottom, that 62.9, even though our performance index is 2 stars and it was 2 stars last year, we are still seeing gains in that number, which means students are starting to hit those proficient levels.
All right, so the early literacy is mine. And I think what's real important about this measure is, number one, it's made up of 3 weights. One being the 3rd grade proficiency test. It's already counted in achievement. It's counted here. It will count again in gap closing. So we have one test, has 3 different spots, and that's important. It counts for 40%. Then there's 35% of the students who are then promoted to 4th grade. 25% is what we call the diagnostics. That starts in kindergarten. So it's grades K, 1, 2, 3. They take a diagnostic, and if they get from the diagnostic to proficient, there's another weight here. So it's important to note those things. Also, in the middle 25%, we have a choice of a test. So when you're looking at other school districts, this common measure is grade 3, the OST, the promotion, the middle is not. So we give NWA MAP here. Other school districts could give other tests that are allowable by the state. So it's important, and I'm not making an excuse, but I think when we are comparing that we need to know that sometimes we're not comparing the same assessment to another assessment. We too have seen increases since pre-pandemic. We are on the increase. We are nowhere near where we want to be. We know students need to be reading on grade level by grade 3. It is a predictor. It's very important, and it's something we're working very hard towards. So we do intervention in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th. We continue. We don't let it fall for those reasons. But again, on this here, I think it's important that we understand that the middle score is not the same test.
I have a question. I do have a question. So when I look at this early literacy, and it says we have improved to 2 stars.
That's correct.
Okay, but the explanation says that we still need support to meet state standards?
Correct.
Okay, all righty, so I am reading this right, and our goal is to at least be at the 3-star, right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the next portion is progress, and everything is color-coded. These are the new colors. And so what I did is in the overall value-added progress where there's writing, I actually tried to color-code the writing based on the colors in the chart. And so if you see dark blue, light blue, and green, that is meeting or exceeding or significantly exceeding the growth expectations for students. If you see yellow or red, those are areas where we're not quite meeting or we're significantly below. And so those are areas that we know that we have to pay very close attention to, that we need to make sure that we are working with teachers and students in order to grow them and to move them forward. And the gray areas, those are non-tested areas. And the gray areas here, if you look, 4th grade science, there's no test. And then in 6th grade and 7th grade, there's also no science test. And then at the high school for mathematics 1 and 2, we don't test that. Okay.
So gap closing, an area that we did well overall as a school district, but again, so you can see gifted, English language learners, chronic absenteeism, achievement, progress, graduation, also it just cut off on the slide here. Those are 6 measures that make up 1 star for this whole thing. And under each one of those 6 measures, there's upwards of 10 components. So we talked about achievement at the very beginning. Achievement counts here, but it counts here under the subgroups. This is when I'm going to use some old language, No Child Left Behind, the federal legislation, the designations that all children will be at 100%, and they break it in by subgroups. It's very important that we meet those guidelines because we don't want to get any designations in this past school year. None of our schools received any designations, and we'll wait another 3 years. So gifted, another interesting one, each year the target changes. It goes up. So last year it was 1 target. This year it has gone up. We continue to go up as well, but the target does as well.
Very good.
So.
What is measured in gifted? Can I ask that question?
I'm sorry?
What is measured when in gifted?
So gifted, a couple things. Progress through what you just saw before. We also do service models. So we get points on how many students are serviced, but that's based on whether or not a child gets an ID. And then the PI, that beginning achievement, counts in gifted. And that's the number that keeps going up. That's the one we're going up to, but that number's going up ahead of us.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
So as Mr. Shiro alluded to, the 4-year graduation rate is 85.8 on this most recent report card. And in the weighted graduation, you've got a 4-year and a 5-year that are weighted together. But the 4-year graduation rate has a 60% weight in that, and the 5-year has a 40% rate. Certainly, you know, we like that we are in that mid to high 80s, and we've maintained that for several years. The promise is that the projection for the 4-year graduation rate for next report card, which would mean it's the students that graduated May of 2023, is projected at 94.6%. And that has remained consistent from midsummer until even today. That number has not changed in there. So we're confident that we're on the right path, and this next slide is going to show you a little bit how that helps. So there's a part on the report card, it's called a report area only. Mr. Walker, did you have a question?
Yes, our late graduations.
Summer graduations,
Yes, our summer graduations. How does that count? Does that count?
they're
in 4
calculated
years?
in.
As 4-year or 5-year? Just to
4.
be curious. Okay, excellent.
Yes, they still help the four-year rate.
Okay.
So this college career workforce and military readiness, this is on the report card, but it's called a report. It's not calculated in as having any measure on the report card yet. It's coming. But this used to be called the Prepared for Success. And what they did is they would look at how many students participate in SAT and ACT testing. They looked at if they have 12 or more credentials for the industry recognized credentials. So this is a whole list of things that we can earn points for, earn percentages to help build that college career workforce military readiness component. Again, right now it's under reports. We do have percentages for each of these things where we have students participating and completing things. But even as early as yesterday, I was on a webinar regarding the report card, and they said stay tuned because this will, in the next year or two, probably filter in and start being counted on the report card as a component. So it's coming.
So how are our reports?
Well,
right now?
this is that one report that Superintendent Shiro said that we more than doubled
Yes, okay.
from last report card to this one. So we're showing we're on the right path. We're showing gains in trajectory. We just need to continue to monitor that and keep up.
Thank you.
Now, if I can make a comment, I know you probably didn't want me to make this comment, but if you remember when this appeared on the report card several years ago in a graded area on the report card, 500 of the 600 districts across the state had a D and F. They just threw something out there. It's like throwing it on the wall, see if it sticks, and it did. And now it went away, and now they're doing it through the reports because ultimately they can't report this right now because everyone's still going to be underperforming because their measure's bad. They have to get the schools up into this, into a degree that some schools are successful. You can't have 20% of the schools not in a D or F status. It was a bad measure. So it went away, but only to be coming back. So I'm really glad to hear that we are making great gains in this area.
So is just one question. It says 12 plus credentials. So like per student, they want every student to have 12 credentials when they
No,
graduate?
every student doesn't have to, but it is another way in which students, if they are not proficient in their state testing, it's
Okay.
another way to earn the
Okay, graduation. Okay.
graduation. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, so as we move along, really summing it up and looking at the academic impact, we just noted improved attendance. It's the first step to improved academics. We talked a little bit about chronic absenteeism, and while we're pleased to see the progress that we have had with the 10% reduction, it's still too high. It's still too high. And even, hearing the communication, I'm glad to see, Mr. Walker, that you kind of referenced some of the communications that come out as we try to raise awareness about good attendance and absenteeism. It's important to know that those are landing because, again, I can't think of a nice way to say this, but excellent attendance. Great attendance is simply not a priority for too many of our families. And by no means is it the majority, no means is it, but for too many of our families, coming to school needs to be a higher priority than what it currently is. So we know that chronic absenteeism is too high when we know that being present, being on time, that it's necessary to make these types of academic gains that we want our students to see. How the state or how the federal government arrived at 10% as far as the chronic absenteeism rate is there were national studies that kind of goes back a decade that shows that when a student misses 10% of the school year or more, so we're talking 2 days a month that's missed out of the classroom or more, it negatively impacts early literacy, middle school math, and the ability to graduate on time within 4 years. And that's from C to signing C, from California to New York. That data is pretty consistent, again, well over a decade. So that's why we're really trying to raise the awareness about the 10% of the time. One of those communications that you would have seen that came out deals with a slogan, and we appreciate our folks over at Lincoln who worked pretty diligently with some attendance workshops and different things that we were doing following up. But we came up with the slogan that we've been communicating that deals with be great, less than 8, and don't be late. So when we say be great, we want you to be at your best. For every student to be at their best, and let's keep our absences to less than 8 for the year. That has us at about 1 day per month, and then also to not be late as well. Had a conversation with a parent today stressing the importance of being to school on time and how unexcused tardies are not ideal, and we want to get away from those. And again, we want consistent attendance being there every day. So again, want to give a nod to our buildings, even with some of the building-wide efforts thus far, to again raise awareness with attendance and to encourage students to come to school every day, to be there, to be ready to learn, because it's only then that's our first step to making academic gains that we want to see. Mr. Fowley, to your comments earlier about some changes in the way chronic absenteeism is calculated at the state level, there's a proposal to exclude up to 60 excused hours and not factor that in to chronic absenteeism with that rate. I still believe that's a proposal, but we'll kind of see how that goes. But even with that, again, we still want our students in school. And why do we want them there? Why do we want them there consistently? Because we feel like we're working hard as a district to create a climate where students can be successful. So from the integration of social emotional learning, which is one of Mr. Shiro's priorities coming into this year, SEL, we know that we've been embedded for that for well over a decade, and it really deals with students and our adults being in a good place for teaching and learning throughout the school day and to build community. We want to do that. Trauma-informed care, again, growing in that, our ability to meet the needs of our students as they walk through the doors. Spent a lot of time and a significant investment in our behavior intervention training, referred to as CHAMPS, as you may hear folks reference. A significant amount, pretty much all of our staff has had some exposure to that workshop. We had over 200 staff members take the training, which was a 2-day workshop over the summer, and we caught a number of staff members up with the compressed overview in our last waiver day. So again, trying to address those needs at the classroom level as well. Our school-based health clinics are rolling along. We have one of the It's been reported to us that we have one of the strongest programs in the state that we're really proud of. In your packet there, you'll see a graphic from them. They did an 11-day study within our 5 buildings last spring. And in just 11 days, our school-based health clinics, they serviced 88 students. 88 students who, for acute illnesses. Now, these weren't trips to the clinic, but these were 88 students who otherwise would have had to leave school to receive care from a family doctor, or not receive that care at all. But of those 88, 63 were able to be returned back to class. And on average, for each of those 63, it saved them nearly 4.5 hours of school time, that they did not have to leave school to go get seen or miss time, missing school, waiting to get an appointment. And also saves our families and our parents time where they don't have to call off of work to get our students there. So even with those efforts, increasing access for our students for healthcare is also impacting our bottom line and keeping them in the classroom, and hopefully translating into academic gains as well with that. So again, and just increased partnerships to promote wellness and support through our mental and behavioral wellness partnerships. A new partnership this year with the Trumbull Board of Mental Health and Recovery, as well as with Compass, looking to expand our programs to provide some additional supports and students at various levels. So even as we look at what we're doing to try to impact the climates to receive our students when they do come in there, we're also expanding our opportunities for our students to be meaningfully engaged in our school culture, even beyond academics. We know that if a student has a meaningful connection, they're more likely to do well academically and also graduate on time. So among these things are academic clubs and activities at the middle school and the high school level, from English Festival to Spelling Bee, Geography Bee, Power to Pen, our service organizations, National Honor Society, Student Council, National Junior Honor Society, Challenge 24, our drama, Prep Bowl, all the programs and activities that we have going on for kids. And also kudos and a nod to our staff members who step up and take on those supplemental contracts to ensure that those opportunities are available to our kids as well. The esports program, again, have scores of students participating in esports, a couple esports teams They did well last year, so we appreciate the support for that. Another way to meaningfully engage students, our robotics program obviously has been going on for well over 20 years, but even the expansion of the Lego League into additional middle schools other than McGuffey. So we're looking forward to that. We're excited about that. Our swim program, which has traditionally been fourth grade swim, now incorporating grades 5 and 6 with that, trying to build the swim program for our students and also build that up, and hopefully that can have an impact at the high school level moving forward as well. Our traditional middle school and varsity athletic opportunities, that's been around, again, another opportunity to engage students. And to say the least, our future student recreation and wellness center that we're excited about. So even the opportunities there, obviously to support our athletics, but with the esports opportunities, the golf simulator, obviously the student-run bistro, and a number of other engagement experiences. So looking forward to, again, want to continue to raise awareness of absenteeism, get families in school, want to create the climate where our students can be successful, and then continue to grow those opportunities for them to be meaningfully engaged.
Any questions?
No, it was a lot of information. I don't think any questions per se. And a lot of this stuff we may have known on a different level, but really tying it all in together and how it works for the STAR system is nice and informative. Even for the Wellness Center, I mean, we knew that it would benefit our children. We knew that the purpose of this was to benefit our children, but while it's not measured, to see how that's going to affect our kids, our students, on a level that will affect the district and their well-being and their graduation rates and our STAR rating and everything is key. It's nice to see that we're not just doing things haphazardly, but with a plan, a focus, and a goal.
A question and a comment. Regina, come back. You're hiding behind the screen. So you're my favorite because you're early literacy. And I believe that if schools only taught one thing, we would have good citizens if they could read and had a free public library. So the specific question is, what are English language learners? How many languages are we dealing with? And if I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are. So I'm going to look to Chris Barrow. Can 3? So.
And what
3
are they?
different languages.
Thank you. It's always good to know our new students. And number 2, I want to make a comment. The EVIL, college, career, workforce, and military readiness, that's something that the superintendent and the board have been preparing for 3 years, changing our curriculum, adding the SEALs, all of that. Okay, the design of the Wellness Center, we've done things that will allow us to be successful on that in preparation for it.
And our new reading program does encompass strategies and readers for students who are English language learners. So we try to make sure, but what we always talk about is with the youngest students is those very early foundational is exactly what every kid needs. So that's what we're focusing on.
Thank you.
In response to Mr. Fowley, I just recently, just in the community, working with a person in a completely different aspect who actually works in the district and observed, I guess, at some of our PK through 8s, children who were not English speakers at home, using tools to be able to get translations instead of just however they get it, like some other districts that person is placed in with their regular job. And they really gave us kudos for that, for going that extra mile to be able to meet those kids' needs and teach and instruct them. So. Cool. Anything else? If not,
That concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
thank you so much, Mr. Shiro, and Wendy, Dante, and Regina. We appreciate all of that effort. Board of Education Committee reports, athletics, Mr. Nicholson.
Something historical happened at Warren Harding today. Does anybody have any idea what it is? Mr. Capers kind of brought it up in his talk. He brought up a certain term But about a year ago, we sat here and said we wanted to do this. Mr. Shira was raising his hand. I was getting nervous that Mr. Capers actually stole my thunder a little bit. We had our first esports match today.
Oh, okay.
It came to fruition. Your support, 2 great advisors that we hired internally. I got an opportunity to go down and watch them play their match today. They played a team from Lima, Shawnee. Lima's located on the Indiana border. Probably in a bus, it's a 4.5 hour trip. Esports, how much money did we spend in transportation tonight?
Nothing.
None.
We played them in football, I remember.
Yeah, well, that was Lima
Long time ago.
Lima Senior. I remember that game. Shawnee's a little smaller school in Lima. But to go in there and see the kids, you know, you talk about when you go and do an evaluation with teachers and observe classrooms, the engagement was unbelievable that went on there. They're cheerful. They're talking to themselves because they didn't do something in time, blah, blah, blah. It was just, the engagement is unbelievable. We had about 40 kids in there today. We had a varsity team. We had a JV team. The JV team was actually playing a team from Shaker Heights. So we've got it up and running. I don't know what the final outcome of the matches were today, but, you know, being the first time that they've gone before this playing some veteran teams, I'm sure the learning curve will be there for them eventually. So thank you for everything you did to make esports happen, the technology, Danielle Miller's group, Mr. Shiro, everybody that had something to do with this, thank you. We had a sub-janitor, Frank Calvin, that came in, and Frank goes, "What is this in here?" And I'm like, "This is the future." And he's like, no, he's an old timer, and he's like, "What?" I go, "Come on in and look at this." He looked at it and goes, "Oh my goodness, this is unbelievable." He ended up taking pictures. He was so excited about it. So just to let you know that they're up and going, I think it's just going to get better and better. The number of kids that are interested in it. The one advisor told me that they've been monitoring grades, and the grades, and some of these guys have increased. They want to be there. These guys aren't even late to practice. They come to school, and as soon as school's out, they run right down to that lab. So thank you for doing this. Like I said, I think it is the future. And the one advisor did promise us a state championship within a few years. So stay tuned. The regionals will be at Mount Union University. The state championships will be at the University of Akron. They have an actual esports arena that they have on campus, I guess that was specifically built to house esports events. So that'll be a great opportunity for our kids to get there this year. Athletic Council, we've been talking about a new video board. We've been looking at, we had a presentation from a Daktronics rep at the last meeting. So we're in the process of trying to figure out, you know, what size, what's it look like, where's it get positioned. So we've been going through all that and hope to have a determination, a proposal in the near future to submit to the board. So that's where we're at Athletic Council wise. Any questions?
No. Just curious. Just thought about it as you were speaking. With esports, is there a way to virtually observe the game?
They were in the process of live streaming it to give everybody, you know, mom, dad, grandma in Florida, whoever can watch it. Yes, they are going to have that ability. They didn't have it as of tonight. I think they were trying to link it up, but I'm not sure if that happened or not. Okay. But yes, absolutely, that's going to be part of the beauty of this.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
Thank you. Finance Advisory, Mr. Fowley, Mr. Flanagan.
Patrick?
Yeah, we, as Mr. Tino shared, that there was a finance advisory meeting on last week, and there was a ton of immense data shared in that meeting. It was well done, I must say, by our treasurer, as her usual fine work was put in that. It was very, very informative, and I must say, we as a district, from a financial perspective, and a ton of other perspectives, quite frankly, that a lot of people don't like to give us credit for, we're doing a tremendous job in the district financially, and I want to kudos to our treasurer for a fine job, and a ton of information. I tell you, it was very informative, and I would encourage each and every one to take a look at all the finance data that's out there. You'd be pleasantly surprised if you have not taken a look at it, at how well we are as a district and how we, between our treasurer and our superintendent, how we are positioned as a district to do the things that we do and are at the ready to do what is needed to be done
in our district, and I want to thank them both for that. And it was a very informative meeting. I thank you, Mr. Tino, for that.
Everything that Mr. Flanagan said. And Mr. Flanagan and I both attended the meeting in person, and interestingly, the rest of the committee members all attended virtually. So that seems to be the way this is going to be conducted going down the line. Very grateful for Karen to being prepared to do it that way. And number two, next year, half the way through the year, the smaller of our two operating levies will expire. The first time we could put it on the ballot would be in March of next year, and the paperwork would have to be to the Board of Elections by December 20th. So I just wanted the live stream and our guests here tonight to all be aware of that.
Thank you both for that. Board policies and guidelines. Ms. Patterson, Mr. Flanagan.
Mr. Flanagan is going to answer tonight.
We do have a scheduled board policy meeting next Monday. Ms. Patterson and myself, along with the superintendent and some other administration officials, we will be having a board policy meeting. And we will report on what comes out of that meeting on our next board meeting. Also, I just want to, on our agenda tonight as well, from HB 33, House Bill 33, that the Department of Education will now be changed to the Department of Education and Workforce, which is a change. And it's on the agenda tonight to be adopted by the board tonight. But we will have, in our, like I said, our next board meeting, what comes out of our board policy meeting next Monday between administration and a couple board members.
Okay. Thank you for that again. Legislative liaisons, Ms. Lamperos, Mr. Fowley.
Yes, I do have something. Just mentioning what Mr. Flanagan brought up. On page 16, we're going to be going through the authorization to make provisional changes to board policies and administrative guidelines and forms to comply with House Bill 33. However, there is a temporary restraining order that was issued last week on this. 7 of the 19 state school board members have sued the governor and the state, deeming that it was unconstitutional to change the ODE into the DEW. There will be a hearing on October 2nd, which is actually the date that it was to take effect. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens.
Does that affect our resolution, do you think?
I don't think so. I think we still need to move forward with this, just in case. And then we will see what happens and go from there.
Understandable.
Ohio School Board is interesting. There are 8 elected members. 7 of them are suing the governor over the changes. So once again, I know Mrs. Lamperos gets upset when I refer to everyone in Columbus as being aboard the clown car, but that seems to be what's going on. A second thing that directly affects school boards is the bill introduced in the Representative Assembly to politicize the State Board of Education so that there'll be an R or a D next to the name. This will, in my opinion, bring more extreme candidates forth. And worse than that is Representative Loychuk's Bill 237, which would do the same thing for local school boards. And it would actually go further than politicizing it. It would decrease the available pool of people, because if that happens, no federal or state employee will be able to run for school board. I just want everyone to understand that.
And also that will come into play will be the primaries.
Oh, yes.
So you will
there'll
then
be a
have to run in
primary.
a primary to then run for the Board of Education.
Which can be very expensive for a job that does
That
not
doesn't
pay. Thank you for that.
As you can see, that Mrs. Lamperos and I read everything.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff coming from Columbus, as usual. I do hope everyone pays attention to state elections and what their representatives are doing in Columbus.
Yes.
All right. TCTC Board Representative, Ms. Patterson?
Yes, at our last meeting, we discussed TCTC enrollment. As of our meeting, the totals were 1,049 students. that were enrolled in the different programs. Warren Harding has 110 of those students. We have like 521 juniors attending TCTC, not across the county, not just, okay, not just Warren Harding. And there's 416 seniors. There are 25 students who are in job training. There are 50 students who are ninth graders who are part of their early innovative program, and there are 37 who are 10th graders. So that's in addition to the 1,049 students that right now are enrolled at TCTC. Also, there are a couple of projects going on at TCTC. I think I had talked about this before. One was they were doing renovation. It's called the Culinary Arts Project. And so they're well on their way with that. And also there is an equestrian project that they're still looking at bids coming in right now, but that is a project that is on the horizon. That's it.
Thank you for that, Ms. Patterson. Agenda item number 9, is there any old business? If not, agenda item number 10, any new business? If not, agenda item number 11A, public participation for identified agenda items only. Do we have anybody?
No one signed up.
Okay, thank you for that. If not, let's move to page number 3. Item number 1, Mr. Fowley.
Minutes. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the August 29th, 2023 board minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
Is there any question or discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page number 4, item number 2, Ms. Lamperos.
Monthly financial statement. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the August 2023 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during August 2023, Exhibit A, pages 55 to 56, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page number 6, item number 3, Mrs. Patterson.
The 2023-24 co-curricular budget and purpose statements. It is recommended the resolution listed below establishing the 2023-2024 co-curricular budget and purpose statements be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 7, item number 4, Mr. Flanagan.
Approved appropriation budgets. It is recommended the resolution listed below to approve the appropriation budgets, A, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Sortino.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 9, item 5, Mr. Fowley.
Cash advances. It is recommended the resolution listed below for cash advances be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any question or discussion on the item? And I believe this is the item that Ms. Sortino was referring to during her treasurer's report. If not, go ahead, Ms. Sortino, please go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 10, item 5, Mrs. Lamperos.
Fiscal year 2024 permanent appropriation measures, all funds. It is recommended the resolution listed below for the fiscal year 2024 permanent appropriation measure for all funds be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any question or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 11, item number 1, Mrs. Patterson.
The superintendent's recommendations, the 2023-2024 school calendar for teachers and students amendment. It is recommended the resolution listed below to amend the 2023-24 school calendar approved at the regular meeting held on June the 30th, 2023. Motion number 062023-134 be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? And just for a point of reference, this is the agenda item that Mr. Shiro spoke about in his superintendent's report. Ms. Sortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 12, item number 2, Mr. Flanagan.
Agreements, contracts, and/or leases. It is recommended the resolution listed below entering into agreements, contracts, and/or leases A through C be approved as submitted.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Sortino.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 14, item number 3, Mr. Fowley.
Memorandum of Understanding between the Warren City School District Board of Education and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 18-S. It is recommended the resolution listed below be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 15, item number 4, Mrs. Lamperos.
Agreement between the Warren City School District Board of Education and Inspiring Minds for after-school and summer programs. Whereas the Warren City School District participates in a community initiative known as We Are Warren that emphasizes academics, healthy lifestyles, and youth leadership development. I'm just going to read the whole thing, I guess.
Yeah, I would until you feel comfortable not reading.
I'm fine. You know I love to read.
Go ahead and read the whole thing.
Reading is fundamental. Whereas Inspiring Minds, a local not-for-profit organization dedicated to engaging, inspiring, and empowering youth to reach their full potential through education and exposure to life-changing experiences, is also a participant in the We Are Warren initiative. And whereas the district and Inspiring Minds have cooperated in offering free after-school and summer learning and recreational opportunities for district students, and whereas the district has received grant funds to be used to continue this cooperation with IM in offering after-school and summer programs to district students at no expense to students or families. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Warren City School District as follows. Section 1, the board hereby authorizes an agreement for after-school and summer programs offered by Inspiring Minds in an amount not to exceed $500,000. Section 2, the superintendent and treasurer are hereby authorized to take any and all actions necessary to finalize out the terms of the agreement. Section 3, the board finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the adoption of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of this board, and that all deliberations of this board and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including revised code section 121.22.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item?
Is this an annual agreement or a multi-year agreement?
I believe it's an annual agreement. The agreement has not been created. It's been drafted because it's going to have to go from Attorney Spencer to the Inspiring Minds Board and back and forth. So at this point, I believe it would be a one-year agreement versus
Okay.
a multi-year agreement. It's something that would be repeated, potentially. But the agreement, again, we already have our programs moving. Derek and his team presented out to the board, I believe, at the end of August.
Correct.
And so
Yes.
this is the outcome of those conversations and dialogue and presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, and I do just want to say, and that this was presented at that board meeting, and we all did give our public support. For information, I will be abstaining from this vote due to the fact that my brother, Reverend Joseph Walker Jr., serves as the president of the Inspiring Minds board. With that being said, I have not been a part of or even initiated this arrangement or agreement because of the fact that it predates either me or my brother being on either board. The relationship between Inspiring Minds and Warren City School District Board of Education is longstanding and beneficial on behalf of both organizations. So while I do give my full support towards it, I will not be voting on it to avoid all appearances of impropriety. Okay. If there's nothing else, Ms. Ortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
As stated, I will be abstaining. And the motion carries. Agenda item number, page number 16, agenda item number 5. That was you, right? That just read that one?
I just did.
Okay, Mrs. Patterson, sorry.
Authorization to make provisional changes to board policies and administrative guidelines and forms to comply with House Bill 33. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding authorization to make provisional changes to board policies and administrative guidelines and forms be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any question or discussion on the item? Do just want to make a note that this is provisional based on everything going on in Columbus right now, as per the report that we got from the policies and the laws legislative committee, the legislative subcommittee report. Ms. Ortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 18, item number 6. Mr. Flanagan.
Recommendation of the CMR to accept bids for its construction project. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding approving the recommendation of the CMR to accept the bids for its construction project be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Ortino?
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 19, item 7. Mr. Fowley.
Ohio Department of Education certification for Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principal Evaluation System. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the Ohio Department of Education certification for credentialed Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principals Evaluation Systems evaluators be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any question or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson? Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 20, item 8, Mrs. Lamperos.
Tuition reimbursement. It is recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 21, item number 9, Mrs. Patterson.
Acceptance of gifts. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding acceptance of gifts be approved as submitted. Our benefactors are St. Elizabeth and Seton Parish to the Willard Pre-K 8 School, estimated value of $3,500, and from Wheatland Tube to Warren City Schools for school supplies, an estimated value of $500. Thank you to our benefactors for their generous contributions to our school district.
Second.
Thank you for that. Is there any question or discussion on the item? As always, thank you to our community partners who help make Warren City Schools what it is. We wouldn't do it, we could not do it if it weren't for your assistance and support. Ms. Ortino?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos? Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 22, item 10. Mr. Flanagan.
Personnel recommendations. It is recommended this resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through O be approved as submitted.
Second.
And do want to point out, we do have 2 retirements this time. From our classified employees, Ms. Deborah Bidringer, we wish you the best in your retirement, as well as Ms. Patricia Bazar, who is retiring. Thank you so much for all of your service to the Warren City School District community. Are there any other questions or discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Abstain.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. I believe that takes us to page number, all our fall stuff is on this one. 54, thank you.
You're welcome.
Item number 11B, public participation. Do we have anyone?
No one signed up in advance.
Okay. If there's no one that signed up, we will go to agenda item number 12, executive session. There is no need at this time. So we're going to jump to number 14, adjournment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The time, let the record reflect the time is 7:23 p.m. Ms. Sortino, can you please, well, is there a question or discussion? I didn't think so. Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you to all of our visitors and guests and community members of Warren City Schools, as well as all of you tuning in online for your participation and for your time. Have a great day.